Alright, I guess we should go ahead and get started. We're running a little bit behind today, but you know how it goes. I had my dog wake me up early. He need to go use the restroom. And you would think that that would mean that I would be ahead of schedule, but no. No, that's not how that works apparently. Lucky me. And lucky you, because we're going to be here. And today we're going to do some more hex mapping stuff. So I want to do a very interesting thing. So those who follow the channel know that I've been running a campaign for a while now. I guess about a year. I guess it's been about a year, maybe a little bit over a year. No, thereabouts. Anyways, and we've had a few dozen sessions, and I thought now would be a good time. We've been focused very small in this very small region in a little place called Poly Island, and I figured it'd be nice to expand a little bit about learn more about the caliphate, which is where they are stationed. As far as sort of the nation or kingdom that they're in a caliphate, which is just a really fancy term for being like it's a religious run sort of nation state. From the sort of primary church aspect. I thought it'd be fun to kind of jump in there. I wanted to know a little bit more about some of the higher level politics and like who's in charge of stuff. We know some things about this place, but I wanted to go a little plus ultra. We're going to learn a little bit more about it. So we're going to fill out some hex mapping like we do. This time, we have a pretty big hex map, so I'm not going to go into super detail for all those points of interest. So I'm just going to try to get them down. That's our plan for today. Because if I tried to detail each one out, we'd be here a while. Longer than I think either of us has time to be here. So I'm just going to hit the high level so I know what those points of interest are. Then I'll come back in later and fill them out. What I think we might do is I might fill in like each time we come across maybe the first of that type, even though that still leaves us potentially like 20 plus ones that we might fill in. So I don't know. We'll see. That's my plan. But who knows how that will go. But our plan is to try to get through it, which we may or may not do. So it'll be interesting. I built this map earlier this week, throughout the week, because we had some time off, because at least at the time of recording this, hey, it's the holiday season. So had a little extra time around, so made this map because it's something that had sort of like on the back burner that I wanted to do for a while, and I was like, all right, I want to do that. So I'm going to fill in the points of interest live using roll tables. I've got my 2d6, which is usually what I use to do those rolls, as well as, well, should I get actual dice out? I wonder if that'll be easier than flipping back and forth and 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 back and forth. I think maybe so. So I'm going to grab some extra dice for us, I think. I do. And let's grab some dice. Well, these guys right here, which are some heavy metal dice, which I love and I enjoy very much. They're from my lovely partner, and this will definitely not come up on camera, but I'll show them off anyways. And they're just like grayish, so they're not super pretty look like, especially in this low light situation. But the thing that's interesting about them, which you're not going to be able to see from there, is that they have blood flecks on them. They have little red paint flecks on them, so they look like they are bloodied. Which makes sense, because they're very heavy, and if you hit somebody with them, you would definitely have blood on it. Especially the pointy ones. I figure we'll use this to fill in our points of interest, rather than having me flip back to digital dice and using that. And we'll see how it goes. Might change my mind later. That's the joy of doing this live, is that I'll probably change my mind. Anyway, so today we're going to fill in the points of interest. We're going to show use some live roll tables. We're going to use some judgment, and we're going to look at the geography and work with that because we already have the geography set. We're going to turn this blank tropical map into a D&D region that will actually hold up into play. So right now, player characters are relatively low level. We're going to be working on the next level up. So the way that I do the hex mapping, all the hexes fold into each other like a Russian nesting doll. And we've been playing with it, and I'll show these all in a second. We've been playing at that 1 to 4 level. Now I'm going to show you the next level up, which is the 5 to 10 level, which is our county level, where the hexes are a little bit bigger. So in our local hex or league hex area, each hex is roughly 2 miles wide. And these are nautical miles, which is very important. Which is just all you need to know about that. It's a little bit longer than a normal imperial mile, standard imperial mile. That's all you really need to know. The reason I use nautical miles is because it folds into lines of very neatly into degrees of longitude and latitude, which is very useful when you're doing like a world map scale and you're chunking it down. So the scales are a league hex, which is 2 nautical miles across, then 10 miles across for the county hex. For the region hex, they are 60 nautical miles across. And then for the Atlas hex, and we'll look at all these here in just a second, is 360 nautical miles across. So we can take that, and that means that we can take any portion of our map and we can chunk it down and chunk it down and chunk it down and chunk it down and know what, all the way down from a massive world atlas map like you would be looking at a map of Earth, same size, and we can chunk it down to know hey, what is within 2 miles of this area. So that's what we're gonna do. You're gonna see me take these empty hexes and make some stuff there. We'll talk a little bit about what my kind of adventures might be. The idea is to make a playable area, which is what we're focusing on. And I want to know some more stuff. Me personally, I want to know some more stuff about the politics. I kind of want to know a little bit more about who's in charge, who these people, in my current campaign, who these people maybe are reporting to. That's kind of our next step up. So that's the plan. That's probably enough preamble. Why don't we go ahead and get into it a little bit. So like I said, I'm a little bit behind, so I'm gonna throw you guys over to the workspace. And we're gonna do workspace? No. Should I do workspace? I should do workspace. No, I shouldn't do workspace because that'll trying to figure out which part in OBS I'm thinking OBS. I think I need to go full screen, because if I go workspace, it's going to cut it off because it's meant for half screen. Let's go full screen. There we go. Yeah. So this is the overall world map. If you haven't seen it before, like we said, each one of these little hex guys in here, and we can. That's not clear. We can this guy actually change the shape so you can see how many hexes there are. You can also chunk it down, give you a little bit more effortless look of what the world kind of looks like. So that's what the world looks like. It's mostly, a lot of the northern hemisphere is pretty empty, so it's a little bit of a vertical inversion of our own world where there's actually not a ton of stuff in the southern hemisphere, but a lot of stuff in the northern hemisphere. So instead of having a southern Arctic Ocean, the place has a northern Arctic Ocean that flows around. Today we're going to be focusing in, so this is kind of the geographic map, kind of gives you an idea of what the world looks like. You can see this line that runs across the middle here, that is essentially the equator, and it gives us this idea, so you might be able to see that there are little symbols on here as well as the major rivers of the area and how they move through the world. So what we're going to do here is we're going to focus today, by the way, and where the entire campaign is being set is all of it has been set exactly right here. So we'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see that. Zoom in. So right here. Now you'll notice that this is actually a water hex. It's actually not a land hex. And they are on an island, but there is actually a peninsula that sticks off of this central continent that most of this caliphate is on. But I do want to show you. So that is sort of the scale of what we're looking at. We're looking at a very, very tiny aspect of it already. There, we're going to hop in. That's what that looks like. I'm going to move this. I set these all up. All right. So these are the dominions. So these are the dominions of the world, as we know them. So anything that's in these big bright color blocks means that there is some sort of, that is a larger nation or kingdom or empire. Now you'll notice that a lot of these also have a lot of white space, and white space is in fact not one of these larger nation states. Doesn't mean that there's nobody there. It just means that they are not huge nation states. They're going to be smaller nation states than there. And you can see that the one that we're focusing on is this nice sized 1 hex one, so relatively simplistic as far as mapping goes. It's not super huge, which is nice. I want to start us off with something easy. That's why we're kind of set the play here. I also wanted to do been more of a ship mode lately because I've been probably because I've been playing in a campaign that's ship focused, and so I wanted to do something that's a little tropical, something that's not that standard Western European. So I wanted to throw this in here. That's got a very more Middle Eastern kind of feel and West Asian kind of feel. So everything around here is very Iranic kind of feeling, so very Persian in that way. And it is a very tropical region, so you're not going to have your standard France, England, Western Europe kind of vibe to it. It's got a very different feel to it that we've been doing in play. I wanted to do that, and everything's got a very, very different naming scheme. So those are the nations. That's where we're focusing in is, again, this little guy right here. And I say little guy, but remember, this is like 360 nautical miles, so we're... I don't even know what the conversion is, like 380 statute miles, something like that, across from side to side. So still a relatively large thing. It's like 115 square nautical miles or something like that. It's quite sizable. So then we'll zoom in a little bit. So this is our atlas map. This is our big map. It shows the entire world. We're gonna zoom in. One layer. Oh. So we took that one big square. That square is the square in the middle. So you'll see the mountains on the left side here, on the left, and the on the west and northwest here. Those are the second continent, and then on the bottom right, you can see that's the eastern continent. And it'll be easier. Maybe it'll be if I do. Oh, I can show you where the breakdown is, where each of these hexes. So that's the nesting of the hexes. So this is our region size. So each one of these individual hexes in here is about 60 miles across. So it chunks down pretty quickly. Because each one, there's 6 of these across in one of these larger hexes, so it becomes 360. So you can see we have a nice little flower of those atlas hexes, those big hexes. Within those, each of those we have that. So everything that's within this area right here, within that central hex, should be within our caliphate. Notice our caliphate is on this peninsula that sticks out into the Gold Sea, which is this area. So really much, they have control of the mouth of the Gold Sea. So any trade that's flowing basically northeast, southwest through here, right in between two continents. So the caliphate is positioned in a way that they are not, while they are not a particularly large kingdom, and they're not particularly even maritime, like they don't have a super strong navy, but because of their positioning, they have basically this one choke point kind of right here where they can control essentially all maritime trade that's over a huge area, because it all has to come through this strait. So it can control all of that as well as down here. Drop that so you can see it. So it really only gives them an area of like 120 miles that they have to take care of here. And over here, only about 60 miles wide of a strait that they need to control. Which makes them super powerful and gives them the ability to very, very much control economic trade through here. Now, as we zoom in, you'll see that there's actually a reason why they couldn't just run a whole bunch of big ships through here and just blockade bust or anything like that. Because a lot of once we get in here is actually really, really treacherous water. As you can see, there's already a bunch of, these are the little 5 points are technically supposed to be marshes as far as what's represented in our mapping key. But what we're also using this for is this, they also focus to be any sort of underwater hazards, so reefs, shoals, sandbars, things like that. It represents all of that. Anything that's marsh, which is again is our little 5 fingers here, that's something that a smaller ship, so something like a Viking longboat, something that's got a really shallow draft as a ship, could get through. Anything that is, even though we don't have one on here, that's like this, which is a swamp, means that even they can't get through that. Like that, that's like a full sandbar. Like they can't get through that area. So as you can see, like it's really treacherous, and as we zoom in once more, you'll see exactly how treacherous it is. That's our region. So let's drop in a little bit further. So this is going to be the map that we're working with today. As you notice, there's a lot of stuff on here. That's a lot of hexes. To give you an idea of like what it looks like a little bit better, we can do this. We'll turn it on the fog of war. That tells you exactly. So now you can really see the hex outline because it goes across a whole bunch of hexes. As it chunks down to, remember, each one of these little hexes is 10 miles wide. So you can see, and yeah, we can do it that way. So you can see, like, as they come through here, as trade would come down through here, you see this area where there's only a few miles. There's a bunch of hazards down here that they're trying to get through. They have to basically come down here from the north. There's a whole bunch of stuff they have to avoid as they get down here. Any sort of like ship trade, and zip down around here, and then kind of go back up here and back down that way. So there's a ton of hazards. So you really need somebody who knows what they're doing as far as piloting and navigating their route, which is how Caliphates retain control of that. Is that it's actually a really dangerous place to get through, where it's very easy to run ashore. So we assume that there's probably quite a few shipwrecks here, and that has come up in the campaign. Like I said, they are on Poly Island, which is right here. We'll bring this guy. So this is Poly Island, this tiny thing, and this is where the entire campaign is pretty much taking place up to this point. It's right here in this little area. It's just a little island right off the main peninsula. And what's important about this, and we'll show this again, is that Polyvapor on this island right here. We can zoom in a little bit. Like we said, it's really difficult to get through this waters. You'll notice that Poly Island has a buttload of like shoals, reefs, and stuff around it. Like it's in marsh, and actual marsh and swamp around it, like coastal marsh and swamp, mangroves, things of that nature. This is really, really difficult to get to, which means, and why it's kind of grown and become kind of famous, is that it's a really great place for smugglers, for nice shallow draft boats that can get in here and get here. Now, you'll notice that if you're coming in through these, if you were a big merchantman kind of ship, you want to come in here, there is this little stickler that keeps you from getting there. Now, what we've determined in the world building thus far is that there is a way to navigate through this one specific hex with a larger ship. But it does require it to basically be tugged, like have a tugboat or tug galley essentially pull it through, because the strait is so narrow. Like it really requires really, really fine navigation. So it's really difficult. It also means that the Caliphate's navy doesn't really get in here very often because it's really difficult to do. So this has led to Poly Island being a very big smuggler den. A lot of pirates and smugglers are there, and that's where our campaign is really focused right now. Is right on this little island, and that's why the person who is in charge, the Lightkeeper, who's in charge of, which is kind of sort of their like elected mayor. They have an elected mayor there. For the village, essentially, it's like 700 people or something. Like it's not a ton of people who live here. That person is a former pirate. Maybe still a current pirate. Don't know. I guess that might be a spoiler for any of my players who are watching. Hey, if you're watching this, you know that you're spoiling things for yourself as we go through this. So that's on you. You watch it if you want, but you're gonna spoil it for yourself. I haven't decided whether Lightkeeper Paris is a continuing pirate or not. I haven't made that decision yet because it hasn't come up in the campaign. They're also from this place, Mepta Shabira. So the very, very start of the campaign, like the first couple of sessions of them, was actually just getting here. So they did a little overland travel. They traveled through here. They went over here. They came here. So a pretty somewhat epic journey to start off. Again, starting them off at first level, they had guides. They did some nice boating, big like sort of like canoes that they were rowing, and then they had the portage over this land to get over here. because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 40 miles away, so pretty good. It took him a few days to get there. Not too bad. I think they rested here, and then ended up resting here. I can't remember if they rested at the inn or not. At the Ketchti, at the ferry or not. They took a ferry to the island. And they got introduced to things like the Marsh King, which is a massive eel that lives in the area. Pack the ferry. But yeah, that is what we're doing. That's where we're getting to. And I'll go ahead and just to show you what the island map kind of looks like to itself. That's the island map. We have the island right here in the central. And done this? Yeah. Okay, so we got our little island in the central as well as some of the marsh that's around it. So they've really only been playing in that area. So that's sort of these 7 hexes, and really they've spent most of the time like right here. They spent a little bit of time right here and right here, but mostly they're friends. Right now they're right here. They're at this place, this little mountain right here, where they are searching for the wise man Halamuth on his mountain, and being assailed by all sorts of nasty, creepy crawlies. But that's enough about that. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. We'll start from there. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we start on is that I think the easiest thing that's going to be for us, and actually we can just keep this on. That'll make our lives a little bit easier, or at least my life a little bit easier going through here, is that I want to focus primarily where we've got our, I think the easiest thing to do will be to focus on our settled hexes. So each time that we chunk down, we have a Abd Shabir here, which is a larger city. That means that everything within this little hex area, all these hexes that are in here, in this area, are what we call sort of like settled or heartlands hexes, which means that there's a higher likelihood that points of interest are going to be there. So whenever we roll a d6, we'll roll a d6 for each one of these. Basically, anytime that we roll anything but a 6, there's going to be something here. And then outside of that, once you start getting further and further away, so it basically goes heartlands, which would be this hex, and we'll also include Poly as well. Poly is also considered a heart. No. Is it? I don't remember. It should be, right? Yes, it's in one of the top 6. It's Travel Haven. So both of these are going to be heartland hexes, for the most part. And we know what some of the stuff that's going to be in there, right? So we're going to start off here. We'll put that stuff in there. Because Palais is... He has 11 through 16. Okay, yeah. So we've labeled everything already in here. We've got Palais, we've got Mabda, we've got Foka, and we've got silver mines, which are all things that have come down from that region size down. So that's what they're a more important iconic location within that. So everybody kind of in the area knows about the silver mines that are in the mountains over here in the peninsula. They know about the Mabda, which is the capital of the caliphate. They know about Palais, even though Palais not a huge place. It only has like 600, 700 people in it, but 665 people in it. So it's just kind of a village, but is well known because of the smuggler aspects of it, and does quite a bit of trade. And then we've got Folk over here, which is another large city, which I think might actually be, is it larger than Mabda? I think so. Yeah, slightly. So each one of these, got one of these. So this hex right here, that's got Mabda in it, this one that's got Folk Tahira, and this one that's got Poly, those are all going to be Heartland hexes. The silver mines are not within that, so they will not be. And then, so we have basically this three little triumvirate of hexes here, of slightly larger hexes of the scale, that will hold most of the things that are going to be in here. We're going to 5 out of these 6 points of interest. We'll have nice points of interest. Most of those will be civilized points of interest. We'll get into it in just a second. If you don't know this process, you'll see it very quickly. And that means that everything around those hexes, which is boop, 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 boop. So this big sort of like all the hexes around these 3 settled hexes will be frontier hexes, which means there's about a 50% chance of points of interest showing up. And then once we get outside of that, which is going to be most of the map, you'll see, there's only a 1 in 6 chance that there's going to be a point of interest there. We go from heartlands to marches or frontier to the wilds. You get into the wilds, there's less stuff. It really represents sort of traveling between places, or anything that you know is in the wilds is very sort of like Indiana Jones, where you kind of like have to cut your way through the jungle to get to a place. And generally you have to find it. You might have a vague idea of where it is, and then that's how there's a lot of like overland, like hex crawling and discovery and finding places. Like, that's very important. Being able to navigate through the world is incredibly important, because you're going to be going to places where there aren't like roads or common shipping lanes, and it's really difficult to find your way. So if you want to go do some treasure hunting, you guys need to have that skill. Or in my world, it's very, very easily to hire a guide, which is very similar to Tomb of Annihilation, where you want to hire, and you get to Port Nanzaru and you want to hire guides, get you through the jungle. Same sort of thing. So I think it's going to be best for us to start here. We're going to start in this area. So we're going to start in our little triumvirate, because that's where we're going to have the most amount of work in them. And do we want to do that? No, because I don't want to hide the icons. I don't want to overwrite it. So obviously, stuff where there's already things like this temple complex, which is our capital, where there's already a village, we're not going to put new stuff on top of that. Some of this is already filled out for us, just very little bit. So we're just going to go down these hexes and we'll start adding the stuff in. I'm going to zoom in for a little bit, because I think it'll be a little bit more interesting when we really zoom in here. We also want to add this guy, add our secret. So secret notes just means that it doesn't show up on the map, unlike these guys where if we do text, it'll put all this stuff. But we have stuff like secret notes for like map has a whole bunch of information in it. I don't want all that information displayed on the map. Mainly it's about like, hey, who's here? Here's the worship center, and blah, blah, blah. Stuff about the religion, because it is a caliphate. So that's where I wanted that religion stuff, so I can always see it very, very easily, and it's right there in the capital. Relief. All right. So, what do we need to get this done? I think the easiest way to do this, and I think probably the easiest way to do this will be to throw it up side by side. I think, or else there's going to be a lot of me flipping back and forth. So I'm going to kick you guys out for a second. You'll just have to stare at my lovely face, and I'm going to move things around just a little bit, just to make it a little bit easier for us going forward. So here we go. I'm going to pull this out and rearrange my windows real quick. And I think that should get us pretty much everywhere we need to. Yeah. Here, let me get refocus. Refocus up. Focus up. Here we go. Yeah, that puts us right in our 3. Looking for. Yeah, I think that's everything. We'll see how it goes with me rolling dice. It's honestly, a little dark in front of me, so a little difficult to read. And you know what? I did pick dice that aren't easy to read, which was silly me, but I do have some other higher contrast ones that we can roll as well. I just don't have the 20 and the 12, which I really probably should have grabbed. You know what? It's fine. If it becomes a problem, I'll just go get other dice. How about that? But let's at least try it with these. I didn't want to go dig through my big pile of dice. We may have to do that anyways. All right. So let me throw you back over. Go to this one. I think we can do the full. That way you can see it side by side. We're gonna start up here and invoke to Hira. Now we're gonna start off with the water hex. So usually, like I said, this is a settled area. So on a 1 through 5. There is going to be a point of interest here. Now, usually roll a d6 for that. But anytime that we're on the water, in coastal water like this, it's less likely that there's going to be something there. So we roll a d10. So that means that even in the settled area, there's only a 50% chance that something's going to be here. And I rolled a 9, so there's nothing there. That's how it goes. We're gonna keep moving. All right, now I can do a d6. Hey, what do you know? I rolled a 4. That means there's something there. Now, the way this works, and I think it's over here on the left. Did I do this here? And... Oh, I did. Maybe I don't have it up here. Interesting. Alright, okay. What is it? Okay, here we go. So this is the table that we need. I have this table memorized, but I want to show it for you guys. So when we roll that 1d6, if we're in the Heartlands, which is where we are, if we roll a 1 through 3, that means we use a d12 on the point of interest table. If we roll anything higher than that, then we are going to use the d20. So if we rolled a 4 or 5, we'd use the d20. This means the way that it is broken down, and we'll go back real quick. This is just for anybody who's not familiar with this process. I've done this process many times, but it helps to go back over it. So you'll notice 1 through 12, and then there's a break. This 1 through 12 here are things that are more likely to show up in the Heartlands. So that's why we split it up a little bit. So you're more likely to have settlements and holdings like castles. More likely to have temples and inns and bridges and creature lairs. And you might think that's weird for the Heartlands to have more likely to have creature lairs, which are like monster lairs or dungeons. And it's like, well, remember that also means that there are humans, and so anytime there's going to be like more outlaw camps and robber baron castles and things like that. So it's in addition to there being like, yeah, there's going to be more dragons too, because the dragons want wealth from people, etc. There's going to be meeting places where they show up, isolated homesteads, so people who are living off by themselves. There's going to be some sort of sign, some sort of informational sign or a warning sign or an omen, like a hangman tree or something like that. Natural resources are likely to show up there. That it might be exploited by people in the area, as well as it's more likely that there's going to be constructions that are there, and more likely that we do the roll twice and combine results. Now, that does mean that there's technically less likely that these will show up here than in the marches or frontier area or the wilderness. Less likely there's going to be ruins, because anything that was ruined is going to be either removed or rebuilt. There's going to be fewer conflict areas because it's not kind of the border area. There's going to be less trespassing areas, which again is like, there's hill folk or people or monsters who are living in the area. Less of that there are less areas that you're not going to be able to go into because they're unsafe. There's going to be fewer treasure rumors because people will have checked those out already. Fewer wandering monsters, same thing. The Heartlands are very stabilized cradle of civilization. So most of the problems that you're going to run in there are going to be people problems, humanoid problems, and less likely to be like, there's a wandering bullet that's going through the countryside. Probably less likely for that to happen. There's going to be fewer landmarks, landforms, or wonders. Fewer remains, which are like, remains are like dead people or animals or vehicles, shipwrecks, those sorts of things. There's less of those because they've already been... It's not necessarily that there's less of them, but there's not going to be anything there because they've already been picked through. Because they're well known. And there's going to be fewer hazards. General wilderness hazards, which might be magical, it might be... trying to think of a natural hazardous area. Nothing's jumping to mind for, but there's less of those. Even though I can't think of something off my head. All right. What did I roll? I rolled a 4, right? You know what I rolled? I don't even remember what I rolled. I'm gonna roll again. Yeah, well, I rolled a 4. All right. So on a 4 or 5, we roll on the d20. And I'll roll my d20. I got an 18. This first hex is going to have some sort of landmark or landform or wonder in it, which we will give a little stamp on our map. We do this guy, that, punk. So here's what we need to know about that. We'll just write a little thing down. If you'll 5 through 10, because that's sort of the level band that we're talking about here. I'm just going to copy that for later. So we've got a landform landmarker wonder. We said that we're going to kind of do maybe the first time that we run across one of these, so I guess we'll do that. Jump down here. Okay, so we need a theme. Very easy to do. Alright, so this is going to actually be nature. Natural and 6, which is going to be a dragon. Okay, so that just means that there's some sort of dragon theme to it. Doesn't necessarily mean that there is a dragon there. So there's going to be some sort of draconic theme to it. And that's just a little nice shorthand for D&D, for the world building, to be like, hey, you know, if you're like, oh, this landmark, well, we can tell what this is real quick. We'll roll 2d8. Grab my dice. Alright, we got a 2. And another 2. Alright. So some sort of ancient carving, a geoglyph or a petroglyph, kind of in this area. What's gonna make sense here? Probably not a geoglyph. We could have some petroglyphs. We're just gonna go with an ancient carving. I think this is gonna be like a carved statue, like a Moai statue kind of thing. But we know that we've got that dragon theme to it, so of course we're just gonna make it a big dragon head. And we can ask ourselves a little question. Hey, is it 1? I think it's likely to be just 1. Ask myself a little oracle question. If I get 11 or higher, then the answer is yes. I rolled a 14. So there is a giant carved dragon head. And carved stone dragon head. What does it mean? What is it for? I don't know yet. I don't have to know that stuff for these points of interest. It's just like, we're putting cool stuff in the world. As we play the game, we'll figure out what that stuff is. This is just to give us basically a toolbox, if you want, a tackle box, cool, fun things that we can throw into the game. That's all this is really for. And we can always add story connections to stuff later. But that tells us that, hey, if you go to this area, Fuktahira, but it also means it's a landmark. So if people tell you, oh, let's say in this aspect, I can't remember if there is water there or not. There is. Okay. So let's say if you want to go from Fuktahira to maybe where this marsh is over here. You're like, oh, well, you were going to obviously take like a watery path. You come around here or something like that. Or maybe if you're in a small boat, you could go through this. And they tell you, hey, you're going to look for the dragon's head. That'll tell you. If you see the dragon's head, you know that you need to head southwest from there. You go southwest from there. You'll hit the edge of the mountains. You'll know where you're going. So it is also good just for navigational. Because it's more likely, in the way that I run these worlds, it's a little... Sometimes we treat like verisimilitude or realism as kind of a nasty, dirty word. It's like, there's not a lot of great maps. Mapping is a very modern thing that really requires a lot of math, generally. So people are less likely to have maps, like accurate maps of the area. You can find maps, they just won't be super accurate. So people are more likely to give you basically an itinerary, which is basically like Google or Waze, like driving directions of how to get there. Be like, hey, when you see the dragon's head, you need to make a left turn to the southwest. So it focuses more on that aspect of it. Let's hop these back, guys. Now you'll see that we've got these blacked out hexes as well as these red hexes that are in the border area. I don't ever put points of interest in there, just because it makes it a little bit easier for me. And also as visual language when I'm looking at the map, I know that there's never going to be anything in those. Those will always be transitional things. So yeah, we'll put stuff in there as far as like biomes, but there's never going to be anything of import there because it's on a weird borderland between hexes. So that makes life more difficult for us. So it also just means that there's a lot of like open spaces in the world, which is fine. All right, so we got number 1 done. Let's keep going. All right, rolling a d6. Don't roll a 6. Roll a 6. All right, so nothing's there. Rolling again. All right, we rolled another 4. Roll d20. What's going on here? Ooh, we rolled a 19, which means there's remains here. We'll go ahead and take this and we'll put our little stamp down. So we can roll our d6 and our d20 to figure out some sort of theming here. Again, we're in the heartland, so I rolled a 2 and then a 6, so that's going to be artificial humanoid of some type, and we can go look at that. Look at the wrong thing. And I rolled a 6. So down here we see, oh, so this is something related to giants. Actually move the 150, I think. Make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. Alright, perfect. So we said we're on the remains table. Okay, so it is giant themed. We'll just write that in there real quick so I don't have to remember it. The giant themed remains. Perfect. This is the first time we come across it. We're gonna do some actual work on it. Alright, let's do some age. So 1. Okay, so they're recent. Alright, and I get a couple D10. Let's roll our D10 to find the type of remains. Rolled a 6 and a 10. So they can be vehicle or disappear with a cryptic clue. I think I'm going to go with vehicle. I'm going to make things easy for me starting out. I can always come back and mess with things later if I want to. And none of this stuff is set in stone. It's one of those things where it's, until it hits the table, nothing's set in stone on this map. I can always go back and change things. It's not that big of a deal. So we're going to go with vehicle. Is it a land vehicle? Ask myself a little oracle question. I think that's... We're in the middle of a jungle, so that's what this deep green hex is. So I think it's incredibly likely that it's a land vehicle. So +5. But I rolled a 4 on the die, which means it's 9, which means it's a no. Okay, is it a water vehicle? That seems more likely than it being not that if it's not land. Rolled literally another 4. Well, if it's neither of the water and it's not of the land, it must be therefore of the air. Okay, so what vehicle remains? I assume this is going to be a moat carrier. I'm just going to roll for that. Yep, 17 on the die. This is a moat carrier. Giant's moat carrier. And a shorthand for me, because I don't remember what it is, but... So, within this world that I have, one of the things that it's pretty magical about it is that there are moats. If you don't know what moats are, M-O-T-E, not the water kind. M-O-T-E, which means a speck. You might hear of like dust moats, things that make like bouquets for photography, things like that. Light moats. In this case, moat is a chunk of rock that floats. If you ever wondered what those were called, if you ever watch a lot of fantasy or maybe even something like a Dragon Ball Z anime kind of thing, they'll have big islands of rock that float in the sky. Those are moats. So one of the things that do that is that the way that they kind of work a little bit in this setting is that they are elevation locked, and that's it. So they can't go up or down, but they can go left or right, which means that they're sometimes used as like carriers, which means that you put like a whole bunch of junk on it, because it's neither going to, regardless of how much junk you put on top of it, it's never going to go down like a boat. Like, you can't overload it. It's locked in place with basically magic. So a lot of people will use that, and you stack it up with a whole bunch of stuff, and it's good for transport, and then you have something to pull it. Usually, in this case, it's giants or some sort of like giant oxen, maybe like aurochs, or what's the other one? Not aurochs. There's another animal in D&D that I'm thinking of. I can't think of the name of, and that's fine. So we're finding a remains of that. So very interesting. We need an apparent cause. What is the apparent cause of why this thing is here? All right, we rolled a 3 and a 4. So it could be something with the environment, quicksand, snakebite, blah, 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 or mysterious circumstances when we already got disappear with cryptic glue. What could we do here? I think that's now sometimes we roll twice and we'd like to try to add them together. If we can't, we can. So something about the environment. If we want to go giant, because we didn't get attack, so we don't want to necessarily attack. Which one feels better to me? Quicksand seems difficult for giants. You know that these are giant remains. Mysterious circumstance, you know, like a suicide or ritual sacrifice or disaster, an inland shipwreck. It does seem weird that they... Because I think this thing is just like in the middle of the canopy of the trees. And so it is a little weird as it kind of got here, and it looks like... So maybe we'll just put that in here, that it just kind of got... Because it is the vehicle remains, it's not the people. Now, are there people here? Could be people here. We don't necessarily know that. I don't necessarily need to know that at this point. But primarily the important thing is that there is this moat carrier, this giant hunk of rock that's been converted into basically a transport ship by the giants. And it's here. We're just going to have it stuck in the tree canopy. If the players decide to ever go this way and ever decide to get into it a little bit more, then we'll unravel the mystery together. I don't need to know all that stuff beforehand. I just need to know that it's stuck in the tree canopy. We'll say it looks like it was abandoned. Stuck in the tree canopy. Perfect. Moving on. Great. D6 for us. I rolled a 3, which means it's going to be our first D12 roll, surprisingly. Hopefully these come up pretty quick. I rolled a 5. Let's, helps if I could see stuff that's on the left. There we go. A 5. So some sort of crossing is here. We represent that by these 3 little wavy lines. That's the icon I use for that. Got a crossing. So we're going to want a theme for that crossing, as we do. I rolled a 4, which is another nature check. And a 10, which is going to put us at elemental. Alright, so it's something elementally related. We'll just put an elemental theme. And again, we're not going to do this for everyone because this would take forever, but I do kind of want to do the first ones we go through. We'll work through most of them probably in this hex. Alright, so there is a crossing here. Now, because there's a crossing, that also means that there's going to be a village here. So I'll just roll for that, and it basically means one in D4. There it is. Oh. 100. Okay. There's about 100 and a little village here. 110 people who are here. Perfect. No problems. So now we need to know a little bit more. So we need a theme, or we already got our theme. Is this thing manned? 1d6. I rolled a 1, which means yeah, it's manned. It's in disrepair. I rolled a 1 again. It's in repair. Or actually, it's in disrepair. So it's manned, but in disrepair. Or sorry, I should have done told first. So it's manned, told, and then I rolled a 6, so it's not in disrepair. Okay, so it isn't actually good condition. So it means if you're going through here, you gotta pay the toll. So a toll is enforced on this crossing. What kind of crossing is it? I just was confirming that we were occupied. Which we are. Occupado. This D4 is going to be the bane of me. Keep losing it. Well, I was going to roll the D8 instead, but then I just dropped it. So. Great. One moment, please. Got it. Alright, for that 1d4. So, we'll roll 2. The elemental theme. Do we really need to... How do we put an elemental twist on that? Sometimes if things are hard, we don't have to think about them too much. We just kind of go with whatever. Or I can always figure it out later. Because I think this is a portage point, so there's definitely going to be some water they're trying to get across. Makes sense with the swamp nearby. In between basically the swamp and the coast, I think. See who this dark hexes, so it's right next to us. Okay, yeah. So it makes sense that there's probably some water they have to get across here. Man, YouTube just not playing nice with me. Throwing me errors. We're gonna keep moving on. I wonder if I can... I don't want to do that right now. I think I know what that might be. We'll have to see. That's for later me to think about. Let's stay on focus. So I think it's going to be a portage point. It's manned and told. Got a settlement there. What's our elemental theming, though? That could be a good thing. So, strategic location. Perfect. And what kind of status we got here? Our location. Alright, so it's going to be a battlefield. What's our conflict status? 2. There's going to be an active battlefield. So this is actively happening. We don't necessarily need to keep the conflict area, but why not? And let's do a little occupation here. I rolled a 6. That means that this is going to be monster occupied. You know what? For funsies, let's roll again. Ooh, 6. So it's going to be something weird. Okay. And a 10. Bless you. Okay. The occupation is probably pulling strings as to what's going on. And that is something that the players can get into if they go there. They can learn more about that. Alright, let's keep moving. So, is there a point of interest here? There most assuredly is. E12, I rolled a 1. And I rolled another 1, which means there's a settlement here. So we are at colony level settlements, right? It does not have great luck, it looks like. Usually I don't play with these metal dice anyways because they're so heavy. I'm always afraid of like denting somebody's table or something like that. Usually I don't want to do that. So they get 160. Village population about 160. We could go ahead and give it a theme if we felt so inclined. And baby, do we feel inclined. Alright, we got a 4, so that's going to be something natural. I think that's going to be elemental again. It sure is. Okay, so it's got an elemental theme to it. Do we know what that's going to be? Don't necessarily need to know what that is. A village is just a village. Sometimes you keep it simple, stupid. We use that KISS. We keep it simple. It's like, hey, this is just a place where people live. It's really great for a location to like pick up quests or learn rumors or deal with people or places to stop over while you're traveling. But a village by itself is relatively mundane. Now we have this elemental theme, which means that we could throw something in there like, there's like an interesting construction because they're made out of earth, or Maybe there's some sort of like persistent cooling wind, and that's why people are living here, and it's really nice. Or whispers through the hills because they're in a hill. 5 and 18. So this could be weird. I think that is. What is that? Fiend. Okay, it is fiend. Alright, so we are dealing with a fiend, so that's our sort of theme here. Am wanting to lean towards monolith. That does super well work with the like just this onyx jet black. Maybe even obsidian, like it's glass, black glass monolith that's just sticking out of the ground because it's fiendish related. Maybe it's either from the abyss or the nine hells or wherever. It's hard not to choose that. I do like that. And we can mix in meteorite. Maybe it's made out of black star metal. Yeah, I like that. An ancient. There's going to be an ancient star metal obelisk. They need to collect star metal from it. Maybe they want to make a magic weapon or something and be like, okay, well, you need some really, really infused metal. Star metal would be best. Well, you know, there is a place that does have star metal. And be like, okay, you go to the obelisk to grab some of the star metal. Maybe you chisel it out, essentially. You're going to break it out of this monolith. Is that going to have negative repercussions? Maybe. Or certainly somebody's not going to be happy about it. And they may or may not be fiends. And they may show up to deal something about it. That's a great way already that we can drop that into a game. No problem. Alright, we're going to move on. Oh, I guess we should do occupation. I rolled a d6 anyway, so we'll go with that. This is empty. Okay, so no settlement. I rolled a 5. So we'll say no occupation. So right now there are not any monsters who are living around it. No sort of monster camp around it. There's no people that are living around the obelisk. You know, praise the obelisk in all its glory. Right now there's not anybody who's doing that. In the future, maybe. Alright, now we'll move on. 6. I rolled a 6. That means there's nothing there. 1 in 6 chance that there's not going to be a point of interest there. Rolled a 5 in the next one. Because we're going to roll a d20 for this swamp area. And we rolled a 2. Means there's a holding here. So that's where we drop in our nice little shield. Our heraldry on it. Hop over to holding. Alright. So we know that this is a holding. Alright. So let's go ahead and just get the details real quick. Alright, I rolled a 1. It's just a manor house. So it's not like a keep. It's not a full-ass castle or anything like that. It is just a manor house in the middle of a swamp. Weird place to be in charge of lands at all, but only going to be up to like 400. This chance. Sorry, I was thinking about stuff in my head. Alright, well I rolled a 4, so let's see if I roll 2 zeros. Unlikely. Certainly did not. So we'll roll again. I got a 3. Okay. It's going to be 3. Alright, 350. So there's a bunch of people living here. A bunch of monsters of some type. Now, we can figure that out real quick. Let's see. Alright, I rolled a 6, so it's going to be something weird. It gives us a lot of... We can get into it. Remember, just because it could be the star spawn or something like that doesn't mean that it has to be that's who's in charge, but that is the theming, so something weird might be going on here. Just to keep things... give ourselves lots of ammunition as Dungeon Master for creativity. Perfect. Love it. So, as you can see, this will go very slowly. Now, it'll start to pick up pace once we get out of this area, which might be, maybe that's what we're going to do, because we're already moving out like an hour and a half, and I don't want to be here for like 9 hours doing this stuff. As much as I love you guys, I got other stuff I want to do today. Let's see, we can go priest, dean, and vicar, or fighting order. So we'll do 1, 2, 3. I think it makes more sense, so we'll do it that way. So 1 through 3, it'll be a priest. 4 or 5 is going to be like a dean or a vicar. And then if we roll a 6, it'll be a prior or prioress. Maybe in charge of like a fighting order. Alright, I rolled a 4, so it's going to be an inclusion of whatever it is that's going on. That's for us to figure out if they ever decide to go there. Maybe it's like a sand point. I'm thinking the parts of the Rune Lords where you have like the tunnels that are underneath sand point that has a bunch of stuff in it. A bunch of weirdo stuff that's going on as far as like culty kind of stuff. Could have something like that going on. Perfect. Let's keep moving. Right, I rolled a 3. That means we're gonna roll a d12. Rolled a 5. 5 is a crossing. Like I said, we're only gonna fill out one of these for right now, so all I need to know is that this is going to be a crossing. Maybe. It could also be a monster meeting place, but beasts and monsters are not, indeed, they aren't usually the same thing. Sometimes they are. I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna write it down 4 or 5 for now. And I want to know who the common travelers are. Maybe that'll give me some insight. So what I'm gonna do is roll 2 d8. Alright, that's a 3. This can help us maybe give some insight. Alright, so bandits, hillfolk, outlaws, vagrants. Makes sense. And makes me lean towards that greens or sanctuary or free space. Like this is not a place that there's a lot of dominion over. And the 6. Pilgrims, religious officials, and retinue. Maybe if somebody's going to see the vicar. Maybe. There's also, we know that there's going to be a lot of probably religious traffic between Mabda Shabira and Fuktahira. Our 2 major cities. So we're on the path, so they could be coming here. This might be a meeting place between these people. Right, what was the other thing? I rolled this, and what was the other one I rolled? What was the other one I rolled? I thought I rolled a 2 to trade with, but you're also going to encounter a lot of people who are outside of the law. Bandits, hill folk, which are just people who live on the fringes of civilization, like sort of like Appalachian hillbilly kind of esque people. Bedouin, people who live on the fringe civilization, typically. Outlaws, you're going to have vagrants that are there. I think that all makes sense to me. I can go on from there. Do I want to... Yeah, I feel like I need to do something about our cause. Can I do that? Hold on. I'm going to throw you guys to my face. Pull this up real quick. Not great. They're probably buffering a whole bunch, I assume, is what's going on. But if that's not the case, just know that this is definitely going to be one you're probably going to want to record and watch. Hopefully the recording is alright. If not, I might try to like upload it. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Things are... Again, I apologize. This is not as smooth as I wanted it to be. How it goes, though, honestly. Hold on. Pull up one last thing, and then I swear we're going to get right back to it. Do that. Done. That I forgot to do earlier. Morning or afternoon or something, I sit down and like do a hex of, and I do it piece by piece, and as we do that and we go through it, you know, before you know it, I'm done with it. But it is a massive undertaking if you're just looking at it right down the gun barrel. So we have our meeting place, our conflict area. And that's all we're writing down now. That's it. Actually, I could have just done that. I mean, whatever. Moving on. Roll another 5. That's another d20 roll. And I rolled an 18, which we know is a landmark, which we've already done one of. So I don't need to do that again. Landmark. One too many spaces. There we go. Next! So now we're going to start moving along. I rolled a 6. There's nothing. I rolled a 1. D12 roll. I mean, 12, where are you? There we are. Now let's roll ourselves a little theme. 618, that is for sure Fiend. We know it's got another Fiend theme. The Theme Fiend. The theme. Perfect. Okay. Who's living here? You can just roll a d6 for that. Exile or an outcast. Roughly the same thing, but not exactly. So we'll roll. I rolled low, so it's going to be an exile. So homestead, I'm going to put exile here. So maybe somebody who's got a fiendish theme, if we want to do related, so this is likely to be maybe a tiefling or somebody who's been kind of pushed out of society or exiled. I don't know why they're exiled. That might make more sense, honestly, if we were doing outcast as somebody who's not like officially exiled, but is like pushed to the periphery of stuff. Because, you know, they got horns and red skin or whatever. So, occupation. 3. Which means that this place is occupied. So there is a settlement here. So we know the population for anything like that is up to 400. I rolled a 2. Yes. 245 people live here. Micah, why is the population important? So the population is important because I do this thing that is... I do buying power, which is basically you can, wherever you go in any sort of settlement or occupied place, you can buy and sell things at approximately 10% in gold what the population is. So to make sense of that, we have 245 people here. If we move that decimal place, that's 5. So we could buy something that's roughly 25 gold. Or people here that are new here, and they usually aren't here. What's going on with that? And then... Adventure happens. I took a different point of interest that's had something else that was going on, and I took these 2 points of interest and just pushed them together and been like, okay, there's an adventure here. I can build off that adventure. There's something that's happened in this area and is affecting these people and displaced these people, these creatures, and they're over here now. And so now they're dealing with that. Attempting to resolve it. Alright, I rolled a 2. And that is... a 3. Be a new one for us. Take our little red Parthenon temple looking thing right here. Go down here. We've got ourselves a religious temple. Probably. It's gonna be a religious location of religious site of some type. Okay. Age. Recent. So it's not an old temple. Put a theme on it. I rolled a 3 and then a 2, which means that 3 is going to be artificial. 2 is going to tell us it is construct is a theme. Don't need to know any more than that. Patron, question mark, because I need to figure out who the patron is for the chantry. If you're not familiar with what a chantry is basically you pay a guy or a gal or whoever, somebody of the cloth, you basically put them on your payroll. You're like, I need you to pray for me or my family or somebody who's dead in my family. Like, that's your whole thing to try to get us into, in the real world context of medieval-ish, basically hire somebody to be like, hey, I want you to pray for our immortal souls to kind of ensure that we get into heaven. That's sort of how it's set up. So it is something along those lines. You're basically paying somebody to pray for you. This is a little similar to like, I don't have enough time to go to church, or as a layperson, like obviously I don't have the ear of the gods, so I pay somebody to pray for me. And then I don't have to worry about my immortal soul because I have somebody who is way more devout and religious doing it for me on my behalf. As you can see, it's weird. That's a weird idea to be like, well, instead of praying myself, I pay somebody to pray for me. And be like, I'm not sure the gods work like that. But that is something that was pretty common. So we have it here. And then this person's going to have quite a bit of money, and there's probably a village there, or a little hamlet there for them to deal with. Perfect. Let's move on. Done. Another d12. This time I rolled a 6. Ooh, we got a dungeon. A dungeon or a lair. Okay. Just go ahead and say dungeon. I mean, they're effectively the same as far as it's concerned for our mapping purposes. A lair and a dungeon. The primary difference between a dungeon and lair is like how many levels does it have in it. A dungeon is generally like multi-level vertically, whereas a lair is usually not. I'm not particular about that nomenclature about which one I use over the other ones. Whatever. Alright, so it's a dungeon slash lair. Alright, let's do a theme. What do we got here? Rolled a 6 and a 7. Gosh, what is 6 and 7? That may be... Those will be more the traversal things. Nice thing is that such thick jungle is that we can actually put kind of hallways into it. I mean, like, there are places where there is some sort of natural pathing you can follow. We'll probably do that. I don't need to know that right now, but that's probably what I will end up doing if I end up using this. Alright, and occupation. I rolled a 4, which means it's empty. Occupation. This is one thing that I almost never find on other sort of hex crawling, point of interest, or location stalking things, is that there's never a location. There's never a location like construction. The way I added it is that this helps make the world feel really real. Because what you do is it shows like, hey, there are people like building stuff. And so if you do that and then they come back by later, it'll be a little bit more done. And a little bit more done. And then eventually it'll be done. Or if something doesn't interrupt them. There's always a chance they could get interrupted. If it gets interrupted, hey, there's an adventure. If you swing back by, maybe you go through... You're going out from one place to another, and you pass by it, and you talk to the people, and they're in the middle of construction. You come back from whatever adventure, and you swing by and be like, this construction site looks abandoned. You'd be like, oh, there were people here. We talked to these people. Where are they? You'd be like, oh, you look around, and you see maybe trace of Gith in the area, or something like that. That's the nearest thing. Or maybe you see that a lot of them have headed northeast to whatever the sign is, maybe. They've headed in that direction. Maybe you can see footprints that are heading off. Investigate, don't investigate, whatever. I don't know what the players are going to do. That's unfortunately not one of the things. Trust me, dungeon mastering would be a lot easier if we just knew what the players were going to do ahead of time, and that was the only thing we had to prep. We don't know that, so we have to be prepared for them to decide to follow off after these people. And if we don't want them to do that, we don't put that in front of them. But I'm fine with them if they want to get sidetracked. However they want to do. Just that there's a consequence if you get sidetracked. Alright. Age. Okay, so this is an old construction. We have an old construction here. Interesting. Let's go ahead and get a theme. 5 and 8. So this is going to be a weird thing. I think this is, again, celestial. Sure is. Wow, EG. Alright, so again, we have a celestial theme. What percentage complete are they? So I do a d20 times 5. Hey, I rolled a 10. They are precisely 50% complete. Thing is 50% complete. Question. Is this a new construction or a repair? So I just do an oracle roll. If I roll 11 or higher, it's going to be repair. I rolled a 14. Okay, so this is a repair. Hey, is it active or inactive? For this one, let's say if I roll high, it's inactive. It is active, sorry. Okay, so it's active. So active construction or active repair of something that is old. I'm just gonna put that here. So old site. 50% complete. All right, so it's an active repair of an old site. Interesting. So maybe this is something that where it takes a long time to repair, or maybe it's just a recent start to repair. Maybe they just found it or something like that. Now we need our construction type. So what we do is we just roll a d10, and that gives us what this used to be, or is. All right, I rolled an 8. Okay, so somebody's making an isolated homestead. Interesting. That already gives us a very interesting take on what's being created here. So somebody's repairing an old, like, homestead. They're about 50% done. It's got a celestial theme, so this might be an old, we can take a look if we wanted to, like a roadhouse, yeah, we'll do it this depot. I think this place is kind of like a market in and of itself. Like, people are trying to, like, if you think like a Silk Road situation, like, people are traveling from Palais with their smuggled goods. They want to get to one of these two larger cities to sell their stuff. So Mabda Shabira is much easier to get to, but is also like the seat of power for the caliphate, which means it's a lot more legality to avoid. Whereas this Oktahira is farther away, for sure. So much more treacherous journey. But unlike sometimes when we think about like the Silk Road, we think about point to point, like, oh, people traveled like the Marco Polo route. We're like, oh, they're traveling from Italy all the way up to the Khan's palace. They're like, no, actually, most people just take small legs upon it and then they sell their stuff. So this would be one of the places where they would probably sell that thing. So yeah, we're gonna go with that. So is there a settlement here? Almost assuredly. There sure is. Alright, so let's grab our guys. Place here. And we're starting to get an idea of like how trade moves through this area. That's one of the things I love about doing this stuff. 225. Really quickly as the defenders get up on the wall and they found the alarm, and this thing whereas, you know, you guys run in is you guys got to get in before the gates are shutting at the caravans, right? You have the party running in that direction as they're getting chased by whoever this angry war band of people is, like bandit war band or orc raiders, that kind of thing, and then can help with the assistance. But likely once they get inside the caravans, right, the war band's not really probably going to be able to mount an attack on a defended location. They'll split off and wheel off and head back into the thick jungle, and there can be a little moment if everybody closes the door, everybody catches their breath. Ooh, thanks for the assist kind of situation. That's a good way to kind of like get them into the haven. It's another isolated homestead. Go ahead and drop that in. And our last one, I rolled a 2, so that's another d12. And I rolled a 6, which is another dungeon or lair. Another monster lair here. And that's it. We have we've pretty much completed this. This first hex. We're already at like 215. We'll do at least one more hex, because I think we can get through one more hex and it'll go a lot faster now that I've done a lot of these guys. So we shouldn't have to sit down and do a lot of them. But I'm going to take a quick break. Let's zoom back in. Which one do you guys want to do? I don't know if I have a strong preference. I want to do Abdishabira or Ballet. If I'm being truthfully honest, doing the stuff around Palais would probably be a better for me. But I don't know if I care that much is the thing. All right, we are Bardock. All right, so I said we're gonna at least get through this one hex. At the end of the hex, we'll see how I feel. But honestly, with the stream quality being what it is, what it seems like, man, it is just dropping and spinning frames like crazy. Which is, unfortunately, I'm going to have to see how this thing uploads, because I have no idea whether this thing's going to upload correctly or not. If it doesn't upload correctly, I guess I'll just have to delete it, and then I'll have a local save of the file, so I'll upload that. If this ends up being just an absolutely unwatchable experience because of that. Same thing, I won't edit it or anything, I'll just upload. Chaparral. They're essentially scrubland, so if you ever watched any sort of basically old West movies where they're like going through and it's just like a whole bunch of like yucca and dry sage shrubs and stuff like that. That's sort of the soil doesn't seem like it's very good for, because that might not be clear if you're looking at this map for the first time if you haven't seen some of our other mapping videos. But let's move on. We had our religious site. Hey, I rolled a 6, there's nothing there. I rolled another 6, there's nothing there. 2. D12, and I rolled a 2. Okay, so we have a holding here. Like I said, these are the things I'm going to be the most interested in, is figuring out who's in charge of stuff, because holdings are really the who's in charge of stuff as far as land management areas. So it could be more of somebody from the church. It could be a noble, like on Pale Island, where the campaign is set. There are a few nobles who are in the area. Most of them are super low level, so they are Ghazi, which are essentially holy knights. So they're kind of like Templars, but they're just knights. So they're minor landholders. There's I think there's a bishop that's there in the area as well. But most of them, well, not necessarily. So we got a fauna. So there's some sort of exotic animal that lives here. Exotic animal could be the elemental. We could probably pull it up. In my campaign of running, they've been dealing with steeders. Right? They get steeders and striders confused. Steeders, right? Striders. Steeders are the spider ones. Yeah. Striders. So they've been dealing with this, which are like fire-breathing chocobo kind of things. They're technically elementals, though. But they've been dealing with those recently, as in, like, in this last session. We're again dealing with them. They've dealt with them a few times now. So that could be a good place for them to have picked that up. We do know that there's stuff going on with like the MX dudes on this part of the island, or part of this world. So maybe, though that's still pretty far away. But alright, location status. D4. I rolled a 1. Alright, so it's a permanent operations. So this tells us like how often are people here, how often is this natural resource being cultivated. It can be permanent operation, like it could be if we said it was a plant of some type, this would be like, oh, there's a plantation here or something of that, or where they're growing this stuff. Like a silkworm farm with mulberry trees and that kind of stuff. It could be a work camp, which means like they sometimes come here. This would be more of like a lumbering situation. Like if it's like, oh, it's a lumber camp, so they're here to cut trees, but once they cut enough trees, they're gonna move on to another area. So it's kind of a temporary or seasonal structure. There's, sorry, freaking coffee ground in my mouth. A gathering spot, which is a spontaneous gathering, which is like, we're going to collect mushrooms, kind of mushroom hunting. Like, we know there are mushrooms grow in this area, so we're here to collect mushrooms kind of situation. And then 4 is pristine or undiscovered, which means like either people don't know this resource is here, or people aren't cultivating it for whatever reason right now. But we ended up with fauna. Let's find out if it's occupied. Anybody here? 5, empty. So no occupation. So the permanent operation is here is only this. There's no like surrounding staff or village or anything that's kind of grown up around it. Which means it could be new too. Alright, so what would be a good fauna? We need some animals. Let's see if that was as far as elementals. Same thing with poison snake. Yeah, I mean, snake was one of the first things I went to, or some sort of like fish that people want from here. Arapaima or something like that, but I don't think so. I don't know. Something that's really exotic, so something people can't usually get their hands on. Fairy dragons. Maybe. I like fairy dragons. Fairy dragon could be an interesting thing to go after. Not really elemental, though. I mean, I guess they have, like, breath weapons, right? They have different colors, so they kind of have breath weapons. Let me see. This is one of the things where, like, you know, Google can be your friend here. You just kind of go, all right, let's see. You just literally, I can do whatever I want. All right, so. Exotic fauna. There's going to be a platypus farm. Ranch? Farm. I can go with farm. Exotic fauna. I guess I could throw all of that in there. Parenthetical. There we go. So yeah, we don't necessarily need to. Maybe they use something with elementals to harvest them or keep control of them. Maybe. Neat. There's a platypus farm. Why not? Sounds great. What a weird thing to have. D&D is real weird, y'all. Real weird. Move on. Alright, I rolled a 2. Spent a lot of time on that. I got an 8. Isolated homestead. Easy peasy. Isolated homestead. Perfect. Moving on. 3. Another D12. I rolled a 6. That's another dungeon or lair. Drop that guy in. So this one, oh, sorry, I should have rolled a D10. A water hex. That's cocked. 2. Alright, I rolled a 2 anyways. That'll work. We'll keep it there. And we're gonna drop this in. This was a 6, what we rolled. Which was gonna be our dungeon or lair. We got some sort of aquatic, probably aquatic creature that's hanging out over here. Residentially, adventure and loot and whatever. And you come across a sign that's like, hey, don't go in this area. You know, the old beware dragons kind of situation. Be like, oh, well, obviously we're looking for adventure, so obviously we're going to go towards the sign that says don't go in this area. Hopefully they're going to be appropriately leveled for that. Because there's a chance that they could run across this and not be appropriately leveled. Like, for example, they are in the Boderin and village that they are in is technically higher level than them. So they don't have a lot of, not have to be fancy. There's plenty of stuff you can always point at. Alright, I rolled a 2. That's another 12. Oh, I rolled a 1. And we've already done the village, but we'll pop over here anyways. We got a village in here. Just a standalone. And because I'm just sitting here, there's no reason not to do it. Let's find out what Okay. I was like, I almost rolled a straight up 1,000. But I didn't. So I'm re-rolling for each other, but probably unrelated. But doesn't have to be unrelated. Could be related some way. Alright, moving on. I rolled a 1. 12. I rolled another one. Hey, guess what? It's kind of a schlep if you want to get over there, depending on where you are. But you could, and that's the important thing. Alright, we're back in the marsh. I rolled a 2. Be a 6. Another dungeon or lair. Keep moving. I rolled a 3, so another d12. I rolled another 11. There's a lot of constructions, apparently. Sometimes it's helpful. I realize, like, if I do this for too long, you start to see some numbers on a certain die come up a lot more often than others. So every once in a while, every time that I do this, I try to grab different dice. But for this one session, I'll probably use this. I don't need to go get dice. Just next time that I sit down to do it, I will probably have different dice out. Which makes sense, because I very rarely use the metal dice. I don't have to worry about denting my desk, because I have a nice pad on top of it. Otherwise, I definitely would not be using it, or I'd get my rolling tray out. Alright, construction. What they construction around here? I rolled another 8, honestly. I rolled another isolated homestead, and I was like, that's a little too many. So I am going to swap that one. So they're going to be building a religious site. I'm like, yeah, it's a little weird in a civilized area for that to come up so often. But remember, we are not beholden to the tables. The tables are there to help us. They're not to be our lords. They do not lord over us. As the Dungeon Masters or World Builders, we are the people who are in charge, so we can always decide that we don't like that result and do something else. I try to use them as much as I can, though. Alright, this is Water Hex, so I'm rolling a d10. Again, if I roll 6 or higher, there's nothing here. I rolled a 7. And then we're back to our d6. And I rolled a 6. Then I rolled a 1. Ooh, I rolled a 12. So this is not kind of like... It might be a place where they go to, like... a place you go to do, like, knighting ceremonies for people, or where people gain titles or something. That doesn't necessarily... Generally, that would happen in something like a church or a temple, but it doesn't have to be. Certainly in this world. Which one of these kind of makes the most sense? I'm kind of leaning towards Trading Post or Crossroads Market. I'm going to roll a d3 just to see if it gives me Travel Mood, how I feel about it. It did give me Travel Mood. Do I want to keep that? Yeah, that tells me where I was at. I really wanted the Trading Post or Crossroads Market. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write down both. But it could also be Rangers. We could do Rangers as people who are, like, keeping the peace on the road, like a road warden situation. Yeah. You know what? I have a d6 for a reason. Let's roll d6. I got Wanderers. I'm gonna go with Rangers. Yeah. And we're in the Heartland, so there's a 5 and 6 chance that we're gonna encounter Rangers. They're just like a ranger patrol, like a road patrol, are super common through this area, which makes sense. We're getting pretty close to our capital city. 20 miles out from the capital city, between some other stuff that's up here. We've got some religious sites. We've got multiple villages that are up here. more natural resources, more religious sites. We've got holdings that are up here. Yeah, it fully makes sense to me that these people are chilling out here. And what we're going to do is I need to put both these down. So we have, anytime they come up with both of these, I can just put down both marks. So there is the meeting place here. And there is going to be a natural resource. And the natural resource might just be water. It could just be water. That is sometimes. Like there's a spring here. Perfectly fine. We can definitely go with that if that's what we end up with. Yeah. Okay, so we're good with that. Let's do the other half of it, which is our natural resource selection. So we've done both of these separately, but now we're going to see them do it together. All right, we already have our theme for it. I rolled 3, so it's going to be a common resource. A common natural resource. I will roll our d4. I rolled 3 again, so looking for some sort of flora, where we can pull that in with the celestial theme and be like, oh, there's something celestial infused plant that grows up around this ancient celestial meeting place, like it's infused with that celestial energy. And so maybe there's some sort of, that might be because of the rangers, honestly. Maybe the rangers are like, yeah, nobody can stay here. So they keep the monsters away. This is going to be an ancient celestial tribal moot. But we also have this recent work cam. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are super neat. I've never seen this before. Udakaba? Wild. Interesting. Yeah, let's do that. I don't think these seem like they should be super rare. They're just berries after all. Yeah, no, I think I'm good with that. Yeah, that's fun. 5. That'll be a d20 for us. I rolled a 19, which are remains, which we have done. We have done remains. Put some remains over here. Makes sense. There's a dragon lair, a monster lair, and right nearby. Makes sense for there to be remains. And we'll just keep on trucking. Rolled a 4. And then a 6. Another dungeon or lair. Wow, right in between two. Works for me. Got another lair here. Even though I think I rolled a dungeon down for this one, right? Yeah. I'll change it. There. I'm not always great. I don't always name things the same thing. But I generally know what I mean when I'm doing it. Alright, so we got 2 monster layers right in between it. We've got these people who are trying to construct a religious site. And these people, well, there are no people. It's just the remains of where there used to be people or a vehicle or something. Probably destroyed by one of these 2 monsters. Another d6. 3. It'll be a 12 for us. And I rolled a 12, so we'll roll twice and combine. Now we've already done one of these, but let's figure out what it is. So we need to roll another 12. I rolled a 7, so another meeting place. And another 12. And 11, and the construction. So, and they're building something here. We've got our meeting place icon, which is our cool there, and then we've got a construction. They're also building something here. That's it. Let's move on. 2, 12. On the 12, I'm going to get a 9. So another info omen warning sign. Go ahead and take our alarm bell, and we'll put it right there. Add that here. Info omen. There. And we're bringing in just the end here, which is perfect for us, and that'll be a great place for us to cut for this stream. I'll keep working on this. Who knows? In a future video, I mean, maybe I'll show you some progress I've done on it. But for now, this is where we're going to be. Like I said, don't need to know, fill out everything in here. I just need to know the basics. And what I will probably do is I'll go through and then populate the whole map, and then I'll probably swing back through and start filling out some of the descriptions so I have a better idea of what's in there. I don't have to do that, but it is, like I said, it is sort of a relaxing thing to do where I can still work on stuff for my game, but not, it's definitely like second level important stuff. Like first stuff, it's like prep for the session. This is like, what's other stuff that's going on in the world for me. But I do like to do this stuff. It's very relaxing for me. I find it almost meditative. Alright, I rolled a 3, and then I rolled a 4 on our D12, so that's another travel haven. Start to figure out, you know, where our trade routes might go through here. We also need to figure out some rivers. Even though we don't have a ton of crossings, there may not be a ton of rivers here. But we'll figure it out. I have a way to go back in and do that and figure that out. But that's neither here nor there. Alright, we got one more. Let's finish this out. Okay. Got a travel haven here, which might be an inn, might be something else. And then for our last hex in this one, I rolled a 1. I rolled a 2. So we're going to have another holding on here. So, around the capital, we now know that there is... So we have the capital here that's right at the edge. Then we've got, like I said, I want to know kind of political players. We have these people. Going to be somebody who's holding land here, somebody who's holding land here, here, and here. So this person's probably going to be in charge of most of the stuff that's north of here. Here, there's probably going to have, like, this area. Person's going to have most of this area. Then this... The city itself will control some of this area. And then this guy's going to probably have most of the stuff that's kind of like over here to the west. Can they cross over into other hexes? Yeah. Will I probably do that? Probably not, just because it makes it a little bit more difficult to stay on top of things. Unless it turns out that like there's not going to be anybody in this hex. But we do know that there are some minor nobility, at least on Pale. But right now we don't know who's setting off. Like this is a pretty nice chunk of land right here. Peninsula to get there. But there should be an overland route if somebody wanted to take that, and what that would look like. So we can kind of figure that out if we wanted to. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this guy, which is our little trail mapper. I'm going to start at, well, let's look on some things first. Figure out what this route's going to be. All right. Making sure that you guys can see what I can see. All right. I think we're going to do Folk to Hira there, through this village. Probably going to head west here. Yeah, they're going to go straight across here. They're going to shoot the gap in between those two monster layers, which makes sense why the monster layers are there. A lot of people, a lot of traffic, etc. They're going to get to here. They're probably not going to go through the isolated homestead, or else it wouldn't be very isolated. So they're probably going to go... And neither one of those are good. So they're going to have to go through that. Remember, it's still 10 miles... side to side, so there's still like a bunch of room within that hex where you could put the isolated homestead that's not on the main road. And they'll probably head up straight through these crossings and right there. Okay, can you... Hello? There we go. Alright. So that tells us what that probably major trade route looks like. that's the primary overland trade route between these two major cities. Also, very few people use this trade route because technically it might be shorter than sailing around the peninsula, which is to this dungeon, or this monster lair, this monster lair, this monster lair. Remember that we have a bunch of outlaws and stuff over here too, so it is a pretty fraught route. Places to go in between. So this part right here is pretty safe. The first leg's pretty safe for the most part. Then it gets pretty unsafe. And then it's going to get pretty safe again. Get back towards here. But we also have this conflict area that's going over here. So there's a lot of things that can happen on the road. So keep that in mind. But, right. Told me what I wanted to know about the world. Where threats are in the world. So obviously we have these dungeons that can be very much your traditional D&D kind of style adventures. Be like, go to a place, plumb the dungeon, kill the dragon, get the loot, come back. We have plenty of those. We ended up with, like 4 or 5 of those? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5. So you end up with quite a few of those within relative proximity of each other, within like 60 miles of each other. At 5 different places you can go to check all that out. If you were very centrally located, say you were in this hex, go to any of those very quickly. As well as there's villages to go and get stuff, there are nobles to talk to, there are churches and temples to go to, there are inns to stay at, crossings and river crossings and ferries and portages and different places to go there. I don't think we did. No trespassing areas, like, hey, here's a place where you're not supposed to be. Sometimes that's like a Kingswood. It could be like, here's an outlaws here that are lost, or they're trying to build a lair. So all these that we talked about were established layers, but there can also be monsters that are in the middle of building a lair, which can also come up as a construction too. So it kind of depends on like where they are in the process. We did come up with landmarks. We did come up with remains. We did not come up with a hazard. So really only like 3 things we didn't come up with. A hazard is just an area of the world where it's just like, this is hazardous to be in. It could be magical, it could be natural, it could be some sort of artificial, like humans have poisoned the ground or something like that. Places you don't want to hang out with or you want to avoid if you can. I think of like the marshes at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, where what's the name? It's not Misty Marsh. The name of the marshes where you can see like the dead people in it and you get freaked out, and Frodo gets freaked out about it and stuff. Very early on, it's just like, hey, this is a dangerous place to travel through. Like, it's not super great. Like, you can get through it if you want to. Very similar to the Mines of Moria. It's like, though I'd say the Mines of Moria is more of a ruin than anything else, but it is a place where it's like, you could go through this. You would prefer not to go through it, if at all possible. And so you really only go through it if you're like really pressured for time, or if the thing you're looking for you think is maybe in that area, and that's why you have to go in there. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. You can kind of see how this level 5 to 10 play will start to come together as far as my campaign is concerned, and they will start moving around and doing more stuff, and a lot more stuff going on in their world. Their world right now, like I said, is very tiny.